welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm Elliot Margolis. I'm here with my co-host Gail Burke, and our guest tonight is Ward 3 City Councilor from Beverly, Jim Latter. We're not going to talk about Beverly tonight, however. We're going to talk about the national election, which brings up the point about the reason why I'm wearing my tie. Okay, I happen to be very proud of the fact that I am a deplorable American. Okay, it's unbelievable from my perspective that Hillary could call 50% of the people who support Trump deplorable, a basket of deplorables. And then, given an opportunity to take it back, she said, well, I didn't really mean 50%. I mean, come on. What is it, 49%? And why are we deplorable? Because we disagree with her. That's what our system of government is. You vote for or against somebody. Takes one vote to elect somebody or to defeat somebody. And just because you defeated, you don't agree with somebody, does not make you deplorable. It makes you different. And that's all. We have differences of opinions. As it happens, conservatives are right and liberals are wrong, but that's a separate issue. Jim.
Thanks for having me, Elliot, and we will talk about city issues when I come on again, but I welcome the opportunity to come down, and the name of the show is What's Happening, so I think what's happening is the national election. I do want to say congratulations. I understand you guys just won a national award for local access TV, and I would genuflect to you, but I don't want to be seen to be kneeling in front of the flag that's on your tie. So that's a controversial issue right now. I don't want to do that, but congratulations to you guys.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, interesting week we've had here in politics. I know you're as much a junkie as I am when it comes to this stuff. So Elliot and I have been known to share comments on Facebook or Twitter back and forth. We jump on a mutual friend's feed every now and then. We won't talk about him right now. He doesn't want to come on the show. But we have some good fun with it. But fascinating time in national politics. Sometimes the pundits use words like fascinating and interesting when it means we don't know what the heck is going on.
Well, it's pretty clear this year that the two people who are disrespected the most, disliked the most, or take your pick what the word is, they're the ones that are nominees from the Democratic and Republican side. I look at it as, from Trump's perspective, Trump was the only non-establishment person running in the Republican side. I don't think the Republicans were smart enough to understand why Trump was doing well. I think Trump was doing well because he was just sitting there telling what he thought. No BS about it. He was just telling what he thought. That's why Bernie Sanders did so well.
The interesting thing with Trump is he says he got more votes than any other candidate running for the Republican nomination. He also had more votes against him than anybody running for the Republican nomination. It's interesting that, far more people voted against him than for him. But, I mean, the Republican field was a large field. They didn't figure out amongst themselves how to winnow themselves down, and it left themselves vulnerable to somebody mounting an outside campaign, and Trump, to his credit, seized the initiative.
Well, the thing about Trump is, and this is what he ran on, too, he's not a politician. He has become a politician, but he's also talking about issues that people really are concerned about.
Well, Donald Trump has been talking about running. Donald Trump has been in the political arena for well back into the 80s. He was on TV on Rona Barrett. I actually saw a transcript of his interview with Rona Barrett. Remember Rona Barrett, right. 1980, 1981? I mean, he was talking of running for office then. He's been a Republican, he's been a Democrat, he's been an independent. Although much of what he's talked about, he's been saying the things about trade war and borders and immigration for a long time. So, I mean, those are issues that aren't new to him. He's been talking those issues for a period of time.
Well, I think it started with when he said he was going to build a wall, and that got everybody up in arms. And then they started talking about immigration and not allowing Muslims at first. He said not allowing Muslims, but they never They never really went forward with that. It wasn't just Muslims. There was a reason why.
Well,
they didn't
now wait a
want
minute, time out.
Muslims.
He didn't say Muslims. He said he wouldn't allow non-vetted Muslims
Well,
in.
I was just going to
Big
say
difference.
that.
Well,
That's
if I
right.
remember, the quote
That's
was,
right.
I, Donald J. Trump, will stop Muslims from immigrating into this country until we figure out what the heck is going on. That's pretty
Okay.
close.
And then,
Yeah.
then
That's
he
pretty
added
close.
the part about the vetting. And that was never included.
Several, a large period later. Let's call it what it is. Donald Trump wants to limit people of a particular religion from immigrating into this country unless they pass tests that people of other religions don't have to pass.
No, that's
that's
not
not-
what he said.
that's not at
What he
all.
said was he wants them to be vetted like everybody else. Okay? In other words, everybody who comes into this country needs to be vetted, and we have to figure out a system to be able to do it. Now, we've had an immigration problem for a long time.
If you say like everybody else, like anybody coming from Ireland, and we have to vet them to make sure that they're not an IRA terrorist?
We always used to vet them. And the problem is, under this administration, nobody's vetted. They just come over the borders.
This administration has I am not affiliated with any campaign. I'm not affiliated with anything other than Ward 3 City Council. But I keep up with the news and the papers and, read this stuff as much as you guys do. So take what I'm saying. If I misspeak on something, I apologize in advance. But this administration has deported more people than any previous administration.
And many of them have come back.
That's easy to say because more
They've come
people have
back.
come into the country than ever before, too. So,
Actually, there's been a net outflow of people from Mexico since 2009. More people of Mexican origin have left this country and gone to Mexico since 2009 that have come from Mexico into this
Well,
country.
we don't know how many have come in because we're not keeping track
Well,
of it.
but
We don't know.
there's data and there's statistics. They have a
They
fair
are
idea
not-
of how many there
They're
are.
not allowed, the Border Patrols are not allowed to follow the law. And because what happens is they come into the country, they don't even know where they go. Then some of them go and they commit crimes, and then they go to the sanctuary cities. We don't know where they
Trump
are.
is aligning himself with the Obama administration, saying, we don't want to deport everybody. We only want to deport those that have broken our laws above and beyond
right.
whatever
and then
law was broken.
Once he gets
to
rid
get
of
in
those
here.
people, then he said we'd talk about it. But
I mean,
years ago,
There's a huge cost to this, too. There's, by some rough estimate, there's something like, 12 million people
Well, there's
undocumented in the
probably
country.
more like 30.
Oh, let's just, to grab a number, let's grab that. You have to give these people a certain amount of due process. If you do want to deport them all, you have to make sure that you have it all right. It could let's say it costs $1,000 a person to deport them, maybe more. That's 12, 13, 14, 15 billion dollars plus the billions it's going to take to build a wall. That's a lot of money.
What is it costing us now when they come across the border and they're in our country and they sign up for all the goodies that we give them? What is that costing us? It's costing us
There are
billions.
some issues with families that come in here undocumented, have a child here.
Illegally.
Undocumented.
okay, here's the question, though. Do you agree that when people come into this country, we ought to know who they are, we ought to vet them? We don't want anybody's criminals, whether it's Mexico, Guatemala, Italy, I don't care, take your pick. We don't want anybody's criminals in here. We want people to come to this country, like your forefathers, mine, and even Gail's. We want them to come in and do something for us. So we want people that can help this country grow and become stronger and stronger, and not people that have a criminal record coming in.
I think there's one congressman from Colorado whose heritage is majority Native American, and I think he said something to the effect of, from my house, you're all illegal.
Yeah, well, but, he's got a point.
I say that to make a point, but I
Yeah.
also say that all of our predecessors left lands of oppression to come here to make a better life. I think the vast majority of people that come into this country have come here and want to make a better life. And I do think that we need to do a better job of, number one, de-incentivizing people from leaving where they are to come here without going through proper channels. I also think we need to figure out what we want to do with the 11 some odd million or 30 million, or whatever the multiple millions of people that are here.
Well, I think the difference between the people coming in now and the people that coming, like our ancestors came in, they wanted to come here. They wanted to be Americans. They wanted to come here. They wanted to assimilate into our country and become Americans. A lot of the people coming in now, particularly from the southern border, particularly the Muslims, do not want to assimilate. They want to come in here. They want to do their own thing. The Muslims in particular, some of them in different parts of the country, believe in Sharia law.
But
they are challenging the courts with Sharia law. And then you have the people in California who want to give California back to Mexico. I mean, these groups have a loud voice.
There's some tinfoil hat people in every crowd, don't get me wrong.
But they have a very loud voice.
Well,
I mean, I agree with the Sharia law. This, you know, you want to come into this country, you need to assimilate into this country. This country,
you can still honor your religious heritage and preferences.
Absolutely. However,
but
there's
you
a
have
difference.
to follow our laws.
You have to follow our laws. This is our country. If you don't like it, leave.
But there are people of other religions that follow our laws and still hold themselves to a standard within their religion. There's people that...
Which is fine.
Yeah.
But in Minnesota, you have some towns that are basically Sharia law, and the cops are told not to go in them.
No, that's not completely true, and I've done some fact-checking on that.
It's true in Michigan as well. Dearborn, Michigan is one particular city.
There are some cities in the Midwest that
and there's one in Maine.
That have,
up in Maine.
Yeah, I was actually up in, that have majority Muslim or majority Islamic populations. But many of these arguments were the same arguments that were made by the Know Nothing Party back in the 1850s when Catholics were coming here from Italy and Ireland. So some of this fear is unfounded.
Well, not when you consider what has been happening with some of the terrorists that have done bad things, really terrible things in this country.
There are some horrible terrorists that have done horrible things.
And they're
the
Muslims.
first mass
a lot
murderer
of them are Muslims.
terrorist act in this country that we all can think of was
Timothy
committed
McVeigh.
by a decorated war veteran and far right-wing nutcase.
Yeah.
Well,
there's nutcases on both sides of the aisle.
He had mental problems, no question about it.
Well, I think many of these terrorists have mental problems.
You have the young men from, where are they from? The Boston Marathon.
Oh, yeah. They're from Russia.
Right.
They
one of Georgia or wherever.
They were from Russia. They came here. They went to our schools. And look what they did. 200 people were injured. 3 of them were killed at the Boston Marathon.
Right, but I don't.
And then you have the
but
schools.
you cannot paint with a broad brush on 1.5
No, but
billion
if we vet people. Now, see, here's the problem. There was the Russians even told us that these kids were no good, and we didn't pay any attention to it.
And they came in anyway.
That's a problem on our part, which brings us back to the vetting.
I don't think that they were not here undocumented. They came.
They were documented.
They
came through whatever the process was that they followed.
Right. But in today's environment,
as a matter of fact, none of other than 9/11, I don't think any of the terrorist acts that I'm just thinking off the top of my head. You had the guy down in Florida. You had San Bernardino. All these horrific crimes were committed by people who were either native-born U.S. citizens, naturalized U.S. citizens, or people who came here through the appropriate processes.
But the problem...
to say that the vetting aspect is going to stop terrorist acts that have been going on isn't a fair position.
That's not what it's saying. What it's saying is that the vetting process will help to not bring in more people that could create these kinds of problems. And first of all, years ago, when we had somewhat of a vetting problem and program, and we had Ellis Island, and people would come in, they wanted to assimilate, they learned the language, okay, and they got a job, and they did all this, learning the language, getting a job, and helping their families without any government assistance, 0 government assistance. Now we're paying people to come in. The question I have for you is, since if you want to let everybody in,
Oh, I don't wanna
why
let
don't we
everybody
open up
in.
all the borders and say to everybody in every country, come on down?
I don't want to let everybody in. I just want to look at the issue in a cost-effective manner, and I think trying to deport everybody who is here without documentation is cost prohibitive. I think there's better ways we can go through that process.
Well, first we have to stop the people from coming in.
I think everybody agrees on that.
No, they don't.
Well, I
Absolutely
disagree.
not.
I think.
Hillary Clinton certainly doesn't.
Oh, I think she
wants more of those people from Syria to come in here.
Well,
we don't know who they are,
I
and there's
think
no
that
way to vet
if we
them.
want to be part of the international community, and there's hundreds of thousands of people leaving the Middle East as refugees, well, it's incumbent on this country to do our
I don't
fair
think
share.
that's true
What
at
that
all.
number is, we could argue about
But
that number.
instead of
Oh, sorry.
bringing them in here, why not do as Trump suggests, make a safe zone in Syria and let them stay in that safe zone, and then...
So how do we create that safe zone?
Well,
Do
you
we
have
put
to
troops
have
on the
the-
ground?
Well, I
to
think
have
you
the
have to have troops
cooperation
on...
of the
That's what
government.
NATO is all about.
But Trump does it. Trump, one of the first things he's. Now, here's my problem with Donald Trump: is three of the first things he said when he became really viable was he questioned the viability of NATO.
Right?
He questioned whether, given the fact that we have sold a lot of bonds to China, whether if China doesn't cooperate with us, we should pay those bonds. And he wants to scrap most of our trade agreements. I do not think that abandoning NATO.
He didn't say
He didn't
wanted
say
to
abandoning
Well, yeah, he
NATO.
did.
No, he didn't.
Basically, he
He
said
never
NATO's
said
not holding up their fair share.
He said that if Russia invaded one of the states on its border that are part of NATO, would we stand by that NATO partner? And he said, quote, it depends. And it shouldn't
Absolutely.
depend.
Of course
it should not depend.
All these things should be renegotiated because under this president, things have run amok. They have gone. He has given in to every single country that he's been dealing with, so that the countries, Europe, whether it's Europe or Russia or the Middle East, no longer respect the United States.
Well, it's funny. I think that our influence in Eastern Europe has increased under both President Bush and President Obama. I think the fact that Ukraine and Poland and Lithuania and Estonia and Latvia are all NATO allies today. I think that our influence has increased, and I think questioning whether we're going to stand by those agreements decreases.
We didn't stand by Ukraine when Russia invaded
didn't.
Ukraine.
Well, it's funny.
And
Donald
neither
Trump
did
said
NATO.
that Putin wasn't going to go into Ukraine, and they're already there.
Right,
Donald
he's
Trump
not-
said, "Don't worry, Putin will not go into the Ukraine," and they're already there. So, I
He
mean,
misspoke.
as did Hillary Clinton when she
But
talked about.
do you remember the red line that the
In
president?
Syria?
Remember that? They crossed that.
Difficult decisions
said it
about
again.
putting American troops into harm's way in the Middle East. I think that this president has made it clear from the very beginning that he was not interested in continuing having American troops in harm's way in the Middle East in large numbers. I mean, special forces
But you don't tell the enemy when you're going to take the troops out, how many you're going to take out. You don't do that.
well,
because
we
look what
had to
happened.
because Iraq wouldn't sign a status of forces agreement.
Well, that's because Obama was weak.
He was
Because
weak.
if you stand up and say, this is what's going to happen, and we need to be here, just like we're still in Japan, we're still in Germany, we're still in the Philippines, we're going to be here.
We're not in the Philippines, by the way.
We have bases in the Philippines.
we don't.
We don't? Okay, I stand
Fair enough.
corrected. I stand
But I get
corrected.
your point is
But you-
well made. Yeah.
You know, we're in countries that. Why are we still in Germany? It helps because an American presence in Europe is important for their stability. It's important for our allies, and we've just fought in Iraq. Whether you like it or not, we did it. Okay,
Fair
whether you
enough.
agreed with the war or not, we were there. Okay, now let's make it stable. And Obama said no. See you later. And now ISIS comes up, and has destroyed everything that we have done in Iraq.
Actually, ISIS, they did flourish for a period of time, and part of that was the instability throughout the entire region. Part of it was what was going on in Syria that was out of our area of influence. And I'm not an international expert. Like I said, I'm pulling this off the same stuff that you probably do every morning, just to sidetrack a little bit.
You and I can read the same thing and get something different out of it.
You're a junkie, I'm a junkie. I'm sure Gail's the same way.
Yep.
What are the websites you check when you finally deal with your business in the morning, you have your coffee, and you say, I want to know what's going on? Where do you go?
I basically, I'm on the road all the time, so I'm listening to either Fox News or POTUS.
Okay.
You know, basic XM. And
So you're getting it
Sirius.
from XM and Sirius Radio.
Right.
Yeah, I go to Fox. I also go to the Heritage Foundation.
Okay.
I try different, and then sometimes I go to strange websites like Mother Jones.
Yep.
Just
Very
to get
good.
to get an opposing point of view.
Very good.
And after I read, and Yes Magazine, which is so far left, it's off the cliff.
I don't know. Yes, I know Vox. That's just pretty liberal.
But I try to get the opposing points of view.
Yeah.
But at the same time, then I see the president on television, and he's trying to convince the people of this country that things are better now than they've ever been. And I look at him in
Well,
amazement.
the markets are at new highs. The stock market's at new
stock
highs.
market-
The
Market's a new high,
stock
but
market
he-
is not an indication of how well the country's doing.
Today, Obama said that employment is rising, or poverty is getting less. Well, it is getting less right now, but for the first 7.5 years, there were more people in poverty in the United States than ever before, and so now that he's reduced it a little bit doesn't mean that there's still not more than ever before. It's just a little bit less than that more.
It's funny because I read similar article today, and the point of the lowest poverty in the United States was in 2000, at the end of 8 years of Bill Clinton's presidency. And then a combination of, and I'm not here, we could both play the game, it's Obama's fault, it's
Right.
Bush's fault, it's this one's fault, it's that one's
But
fault.
you brought up a very interesting point. Under Bill Clinton's administration, it was the lowest. Bill Clinton did one thing very smart that very few presidents have done. He worked with the opposing party. He worked with Newt Gingrich. When Newt Gingrich had his, what do they call it?
Something about
Something
America.
about America.
Yeah.
The contract with America.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton.
Or as those of us in the Democratic Party call it, the contract on America.
Okay, but Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich worked together, and that's why Bill Clinton's presidency was as good as it was, because both parties worked together. We don't have that with Obama at all.
Well, I think we did, and I think Speaker Boehner tried to work with him, but he couldn't bring enough of his caucus to the table to the deals that they made. They had 2 or 3 chances at a grand bargain to control some spending and deal with some tax revenue. That Boehner walked away from the table in good faith and couldn't get enough Republican votes to back him.
Obama, from the very beginning, had no intention
Obama, from the very beginning,
with the Republicans.
when Mitch McConnell says that his singular purpose was to make sure Obama accomplishes nothing and to make sure he's a one-term president, the Republican Party is just as engaged in the complete gridlock in Boston.
I
don't
no
think
question.
you can
No
point a
question.
finger at one side or the
I
other
agree
here.
with you on that.
But
Both
there's
parties
also
are.
no argument that Obama is the most racist president we've ever had. When you start off with the
That question's absurd. I mean, that statement's absolutely absurd. Obama's the most racist president we ever had.
Absolutely,
Well,
absolutely. When you start
I
off-
discard that out of hand. That's silly.
when you start off with the fact that the Cambridge police acted stupidly, if you were trying to break into your house and a cop came up to you and said, "What are you doing?" and you said, "None of your business," and you continue to break in, what is that cop supposed to do? Okay, that's number one. Why is it that when you had the situation in Ferguson, 3 people from the federal government went to that kid's funeral? No people from the federal government have gone to a cop's funeral or to a military funeral.
That's absolutely not true. President Obama went to the policeman's eulogy down in Dallas.
In general, this has been
But
the case.
that's not true.
It is true.
No, it isn't.
Who does he have advising him? He has the Reverend
I don't speak
Al
for the
Sharpton.
I don't speak for the President of the United States, but I don't
You
think
don't have to,
I
but
don't
he's
think
got
the
the
Reverend Al
Reverend
Sharpton
Al.
is getting a whole lot of his bandwidth. That's just my
Are you
opinion.
kidding?
I get a funny Al Sharpton story.
You
though.
should
All
see
right.
I have
him
a funny
in
Al
Ferguson.
Sharpton story.
Listen to him
He
in
was on
Ferguson.
MSNBC, and by the way, the websites I go to are usually somewhat in this order. I go to Politico, Real Clear Politic, Drudge Report, and Huffington Post. Those are my four. And then five.
So you go one,
Yeah,
one
well, no,
right,
I-
one
I-
right-leaning.
I like to mix it
Yeah.
up and see what's
Yeah.
going on the other side of the
Yeah.
aisle too.
I
But the Al
watch
Sharpton,
MSNBC too.
and somebody asked Al Sharpton about Donald Trump, and he said he worked with Donald Trump, and he said he actually worked with him and Don King on some promotion in Atlantic City. And he said, and he got in a helicopter in Manhattan and went for a 30-mile helicopter ride with Donald Trump and Don King to Atlantic City, and he said he never got a word in edgewise. And he says, that doesn't happen often to Al Sharpton if he doesn't get a word in edgewise.
Well, Al
a long
King
time
and
ago.
Trump, you
Don
know,
King, yeah.
Don, yeah. That's a good story.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I have a question though. What is happening with Hillary's health?
I think she, like anybody else, and you know, I've been out on the campaign trail. You run yourself down, you become susceptible to getting sick, and she got pneumonia.
okay, but
Well,
why
today-
lie about it?
Because
She
she's
did lie.
not always the most astute politician that I've ever
She's
seen.
a liar.
Because she could have easily. I think that she's overly secretive when she doesn't always need to be.
She's a liar.
I think
She-
she's
well, she
overly
lied about-
secretive.
And her
She lied to
husband-
the parents of the guys that died at Benghazi.
No,
She lied to them.
No,
She lied to the
You and I
Congress.
both know it
Yes,
wasn't
she
that
did.
movie. She told them it was the movie.
there were lots of things that went into Benghazi. It was a horrible situation.
She
Would
lied
you
to the
trust
parents.
her?
She
Would you
lied to
trust
the
her
parents.
to, at that 3 o'clock phone call after she failed in Benghazi?
Did she
Yeah.
specifically fail?
Oh, yeah.
According to Colin Powell today, it was there was plenty of blame to go around to a lot of
Colin
places.
Powell hates Trump, and he is going to defend Hillary, even though he doesn't agree with her.
General Keane.
Well, I think he doesn't like Trump, and probably for some pretty good reason. Most of the national security apparatus of both parties sees him as isolationist and not particularly advancing America's interests in the world as they see it.
Well, you got, the funny thing
I'm
is you
going to
got
say
about,
people like
Obama.
Max Boot. I don't know if you've ever looked him up, but he's done a lot of national security stuff. These are all Republican. I mean, I'm not talking the loony left here.
Right.
I'm talking there's a fairly large subset of the of the Republican foreign policy apparatus that is not only not backing their party's nominee, they're outwardly backing Hillary Clinton, which
That's the elitist establishment.
that's
of the
basically
Republican
because
Party.
Trump is not
He's
one
not
of the regular.
do you ever
Partisan.
read P.J. O'Rourke?
No.
I would love to answer that, but unfortunately, our time is just about over.
You're kidding me.
No, it's
I
up,
know.
and
could
we
do
haven't even
another
started
one.
talking about what we were supposed to talk
That's
about.
right, yeah. But anyway, we thank you for coming on, and
I enjoyed
we'd love
it.
to have you come back.
We'll come back and talk some city
We
business.
can get into other issues at that time.
And Elliot and I have talked about doing this at a national election for about 4 election cycles now, and it's fun to finally come in
I'm
and
glad.
toss it around
We
a
may
little
have
bit.
to
Glad
do
you
part 2 after the first debate or
After-
something.
yeah.
Maybe we'll check
Maybe
our
we can
schedules
squeeze
and
it in.
we'll see
Okay.
what we can do.
Sounds
All
good.
right.
But we got to check so that we're all not wearing blue shirts next
Okay.
time.
Red, white, and blue. Okay. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
And thank you, viewers, for watching. And keep tuned because we are going to have more shows about the election from now until November. So thank you very much and good night.